exactly. Well, I think, it's interesting. When we first met, we both had a similar attitude, I guess, towards the sports nutrition and sports supplement, both the industry and also the science, or sort of maybe the lack of science, or the way science was treated in terms of sports nutrition. And I remember, maybe, I don't know if we had a conversation specifically then, or it's just sort of this ongoing conversation about dietitians versus non-dietitians when it comes to sports nutrition. And you were always a big proponent of whoever knows sports nutrition should give sports nutrition advice. And as a dietitian, it seemed like you were quite hated by other dietitians because you held that view. And I remember it was a story you told about, why dietitians, and actually everybody, we all used to use, or still use, McCardle Catch and Catch, or Catch and Catch's book. And there's a sports nutrition component. And maybe you had mentioned to me that you had asked a group of dietitians to use that book if you felt that the Catch brothers were unqualified to give sports nutrition advice, when in fact you're using their textbook, even though they're not dietitians. And you held really quite the renegade view, which I always appreciated, because, all of us are kind of renegades to a point. But I'm sure during your master's degree in Florida State, this had to come about with your interactions with maybe your professors or other students. Tell a little bit about how that started.
I think it started by being born and growing up in New York, and sometimes not being either afraid or inhibited to ask a question or to give an opinion, or to try to see through the weeds about what is the bigger story here. So when it comes to the topic that you bring up, I do remember distinctly, I was also very active with the group formerly known as SCAN, from the then American Dietetic Association. They changed their name also, but it's a dietary practice group of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And there was hard policy that no one can become a SCAN member unless they were either an honorary member, like bestowed upon them, or they were an RD. And to me, that just did not make logical sense, because you cannot discuss and understand sports nutrition or the application of nutrition for sport without the work of mostly people that are not RDs. And the example of giving McCardle Catch and Catch is, in undergrad exercise science or exercise phys, at least back then, and for 20 plus years, that was the standard book used. And there's, of course, a nutrition component. And to do sports nutrition, you actually have to understand not just glycolysis or Krebs cycle or gluconeogenesis, but you also have to understand muscle energetics. To me, you also have to understand, nutrient repletion. You also have to understand basic physiology and cellular metabolism in aerobic and anaerobic states, and all of these different things, because an athlete just doesn't live in one phase, right? Most athletes, right? And so how can the SCAN or the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics related group have such a position when even the books that we learned from and invited speakers to their conference are such people like Bill Evans, William Evans, right? PhD, not RD, who did extensive work with Nancy Clark, somebody that's an RD, a great writer, great dietitian, great sport nutritionist. And so it just didn't make any logical sense to me. And it still doesn't when people try to put things in, stay in your lane. But no, there's overlapping lanes. It's why that when you drive, most of the time it's dashed lines, not a solid line.
Right.
It's just how you go about expanding, the greater understanding. 5-10 years ago, there wasn't thoughts of either nutritional neuroscience or nutritional psychiatry. Absolutely. Yet now those are growing fields of both academic research, peer-reviewed journals, conferences, and even how some people utilize the information for their practice. So, and part of what I also saw, and this might be for anywhere, but part of what I also observed in general was people being afraid of change, so they like to stay within their own group, meaning of thought processes, leadership, and discourse. And so sometimes it's easier to label somebody a problem child, versus
That would be you.
yeah, Jake Paul and myself, versus asking what are they really trying to say if they're not communicating it well, or what are they saying, and even though I don't like it, what are they saying?